My ex-wife cheated during our engagement, married me regardless, left me for her ex, then used my ring to get engaged to him. After he dumped her, she blamed me for it all. I'm a 33-year-old guy who, up until recently, had been really hesitant to commit to a serious relationship. My past experiences left me pretty scared to commit. A few years ago, I was in a toxic relationship with a girl who was incredibly manipulative and controlling. I didn't see the red flags early on because, love can make you blind. We were together for about 3 years, and during that time, I lost a lot of who I was. She isolated me from my friends, made me feel like I was always in the wrong, and cheated on me multiple times. When I finally found the strength to leave her, I promised myself I wouldn't let anyone have that kind of control over me again. After that relationship, I became really cautious. I dated here and there, but nothing serious. I was scared of getting hurt again, so I kept things casual. I wasn't looking for anything more than just having fun, but deep down, I knew I wanted something real. The problem was, I didn't trust myself to pick the right person. I thought I'd always end up with someone who would hurt me again. So when I met Arya, I had my guard up. But she seemed different at first, like maybe she was someone I could finally let my guard down with. Arya, who was 31 years old, had her own set of issues. She came from a rough background. From what she told me, her parents weren't very supportive, and she had a history of unstable relationships. She'd been in and out of therapy for years, dealing with anxiety, depression, and trust issues. She was very open about her mental health struggles, and I respected that. It made me feel like she was genuine because she wasn't trying to hide the fact that she had problems. I felt like I could be real with her too, which was something I hadn't felt in a long time. She mentioned that her previous relationships had ended badly, mostly because of her jealousy and trust issues. She even admitted that she had been cheated on a couple of times, which only made her more insecure. I could relate to the trust issues given my past, so I thought maybe we could help each other heal. But looking back, I think we were both too damaged to really be good for each other. Arya and I met through a mutual friend, Kayla, at a party. I wasn't planning to go, but Kayla convinced me to come out and have some fun. She'd been trying to set me up with someone for a while, so I figured this was just another one of her attempts. But when I met Arya, there was an instant connection. We clicked in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. We had similar interests, movies, music, even our taste in books was surprisingly alike. It felt like meeting someone who really got me. We started dating pretty quickly after that. From the beginning, we were both clear about our goals, neither of us was interested in a fling. We were dating with the intention of finding someone to settle down with. This was a big deal for me because I hadn't felt ready to settle down with anyone in years, but with Arya, I felt like maybe I'd found the person I could do that with. We talked about marriage early on, and it didn't scare me the way it used to. She seemed like someone I could build a future with. But things started getting complicated sooner than I expected. Arya had major jealousy issues, which led to frequent arguments. At first, I tried to be understanding because of her past. I knew she'd been cheated on before, so I figured her jealousy was just a way of protecting herself. But it got out of hand. She would get upset if I so much as talked to another woman, even if it was just a friendly conversation. She'd accuse me of flirting, of wanting to cheat on her, and it didn't help that she would bring up my ex and compare herself to her. It was exhausting. My family wasn't keen on Arya either. They thought she was too erratic and unstable. My mom even told me she thought Arya was bad news and that I should reconsider the relationship. But I didn't listen. I was convinced that my family just didn't understand her, that they were being too judgmental. Arya had a way of making me feel like we were the only ones who understood each other and that everyone else was just trying to tear us apart. We broke up temporarily after one particularly nasty argument where she accused me of cheating with a coworker. The accusation was completely false, and it hurt that she didn't trust me. I was ready to end things for good, but Arya came back apologizing and promising to work on her issues. She said she realized she was pushing me away and that she didn't want to lose me. Against my better judgment, I decided to give her another chance. After we got back together, things seemed to improve for a while. Arya was making an effort to control her jealousy, and we were actually enjoying our time together without constant arguments. About a year later, after we had celebrated our 3-year anniversary, I decided to propose. I really thought she had changed, and I believed we could make it work. I proposed during a weekend getaway to the mountains, where we had one of our first dates. It felt like the perfect place to take that next step. Arya was over the moon when I proposed. She seemed genuinely happy, and for a while, everything felt right. We started planning the wedding, and I really thought we were on our way to building a life together. But I should have known things were never going to be that simple. Planning the wedding was where things started to fall apart again. Arya had this vision of a big extravagant wedding, which I wasn't really on board with. I wanted something simpler, but she insisted that this was her dream wedding and that we should go all out. She kept adding things to the list: more guests, a fancier venue, designer dresses. I tried to compromise, but it felt like nothing I suggested was good enough. We argued almost daily about the wedding. Arya turned into a bit of a bridezilla, to be honest. She was stressed out all the time and would snap at me over the smallest things. If something didn't go exactly as she wanted, she would lose it. I started to hate anything related to the wedding because I knew it would just lead to another fight. It wasn't just about the money either. She was obsessed with making everything perfect, and I felt like I was just along for the ride, like my opinion didn't matter. I tried to tell her how I was feeling, but she would either dismiss my concerns or turn it into a huge argument. The stress wasn't just between us, my family was still skeptical of Arya, and the wedding planning only made things worse. My parents were not thrilled with the idea of spending so much money on a wedding, especially when they still weren't sold on Arya being the right person for me. They started making passive-aggressive comments, and at one point, they even threatened not to attend the wedding if things didn't calm down. This put me in a tough spot because I wanted my family to be there, but I also didn't want to upset Arya by siding with them. Arya wasn't too happy about my parents either. She felt like they were trying to sabotage the wedding and our relationship. She accused them of not respecting her. I found myself stuck in the middle, trying to please everyone but not really succeeding with anyone. The closer we got to the wedding, the more I felt like things were out of control. The financial strain was also taking a toll on me. Arya was insisting on an expensive wedding, and even though we had some savings, it was clear we were going to have to go into debt to afford everything she wanted. I tried to talk to her about cutting back on some things, but she would get really upset, saying I was ruining her dream wedding. I didn't want to disappoint her, so I just kept quiet and hoped we would make it work. But it was stressing me out to the point where I couldn't sleep at night. I kept thinking about all the bills we were racking up and how we were going to pay for them after the wedding. What made it worse was that I felt like I couldn't talk to anyone about it. My family would just say, "I told you so," and I didn't want to burden my friends with my problems. So, I kept it all inside, trying to put on a brave face for Arya and everyone else, but inside, I was a mess. I was starting to wonder if I was making a huge mistake, but I didn't know how to back out without causing even more drama. The wedding day finally arrived, about 11 months ago, but it didn't go as smoothly as I had hoped. Arya seemed distracted and nervous from the moment she woke up. I chalked it up to pre-wedding jitters because I was feeling anxious too, but there was something off about her that I couldn't quite put my finger on. During the ceremony, she kept glancing at her phone, which I thought was weird, but I didn't want to make a scene, so I let it go. Right before the ceremony, we had a brief argument. I saw her texting someone, and when I asked who it was, she got defensive. She snapped at me, saying it was none of my business and that I was being paranoid. That threw me off, but I didn't want to ruin the day, so I dropped it. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The honeymoon period was supposed to be a time for us to relax and enjoy being newlyweds, but it was anything but that. We went on a short trip to a tropical island, but instead of spending time together, Arya kept to herself most of the time. She would go off on her own, saying she needed space or that she wasn't feeling well. When we were together, we ended up arguing more often than not. She was moody and distant, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. The trip was cut short because Arya had a sudden mood swing, and we had a huge fight. She accused me of being too controlling and said she felt trapped in the marriage. I was shocked because this was supposed to be the happiest time of our lives, but it was turning into a nightmare. I tried to reason with her, but nothing I said seemed to make a difference. It felt like she was already checked out of the marriage, and we hadn't even been married for a month. A few weeks after we got back from the honeymoon, Arya confessed that she still had feelings for Evan, her high school sweetheart. She admitted that she'd been talking to him throughout our engagement and even during our wedding. She said she had considered calling off the wedding multiple times but didn't have the courage to do it. Hearing her say that was like a punch to the gut. All that stress, all those arguments, we could have avoided it all if she had just been honest with me from the start. But instead, she went through with the wedding, knowing she didn't want to be with me. She said she was sorry, but it didn't feel sincere. It felt like she was just trying to get it off her chest, like she was relieved to finally tell me the truth. I tried to keep it together, but I was devastated. I couldn't believe I had married someone who didn't even want to be with me. She said she didn't know what to do, that she was confused and didn't want to hurt me, but all I could think about was how betrayed I felt. I asked her why she didn't just end it before the wedding, and she said she thought she could make it work, that maybe marrying me would help her forget about Evan. But it didn't, and now we were both stuck in a marriage that wasn't meant to be. Despite everything, I still loved Arya, and I wasn't ready to give up on the marriage just yet. I tried to convince her that it was just a phase, that she was just confused, and that we could work through it. I suggested setting boundaries, like asking her to stop talking to Evan so we could focus on us. I even brought up the idea of couples counseling, thinking that maybe a professional could help us sort through our issues. But Arya refused. She said she didn't think counseling would help and that she didn't want to stop talking to Evan because he was the only one who understood her. That was the final nail in the coffin for me. I realized that no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't force her to want to be in the marriage. She was still holding on to her past with Evan, and I was just in the way. It broke my heart, but I knew I had to let her go. As if things couldn't get worse, I started digging into our relationship and found out that Arya had been lying to me for months. She hadn't just been talking to Evan since the wedding, she'd been in contact with him since we got engaged. She had been sneaking around, lying about where she was and who she was with. There were times when she said she was with her friends, but she was actually meeting up with Evan. All those moments when I thought she was just being distant or stressed, it was because she was hiding her relationship with him. Finding all of this out ruined whatever trust I had left in her. I felt like a complete fool for not seeing the signs earlier. I had been so focused on making the wedding perfect and trying to make her happy that I missed all the red flags. Looking back, it was obvious that something was wrong, but I was too blinded by love again to see it. When I confronted Arya about her lies, things got ugly. We had a heated argument that escalated into a physical altercation. I'm not proud of how I acted, but I was so angry and hurt that I couldn't control myself. I didn't hit her or anything, but I did grab her arms and shake her, demanding to know why she did this to me. She screamed at me, calling me controlling and accusing me of being the reason our marriage was falling apart. After that fight, Arya packed her bags and moved out. She left a note saying that she couldn't live like this anymore and that she needed space. I was left alone in our apartment. It was one of the darkest moments of my life. I felt like I had lost everything. A few days later, I received divorce papers in the mail, and that was that. Our marriage was over before it even really began. After Arya moved out, we didn't have any direct contact. Everything was handled through our lawyers, and it was a clean break as far as the legal stuff went. But emotionally, I was a wreck. I couldn't stop thinking about what went wrong and how everything fell apart so quickly. I was angry, hurt, and confused all at the same time. I wanted to reach out to her to ask her why she did this to me, but I knew it wouldn't make any difference. She had made her choice, and there was no going back. Even though I wasn't in contact with Arya, I still heard about her through Kayla, our mutual friend. Kayla was stuck in the middle of this whole mess, and I felt bad for her. She didn't want to take sides, but it was hard for her not to get involved when both of her friends were going through something so complicated. Not long after the divorce, Kayla told me that Arya had started dating Evan again. I wasn't surprised, but it still hurt to hear. It was like she didn't waste any time moving on. According to Kayla, Arya and Evan moved in together pretty quickly and were flaunting their relationship all over social media. They were posting pictures of themselves at all these places that Arya and I had planned to go together. It was like she was rubbing it in my face, even though I wasn't following her on social media anymore. She used me to get over Evan, and once she realized she couldn't, she went back to him. It made me feel like our entire relationship was a lie, like she never really loved me. I started to resent her even more, and I couldn't understand how she could be so happy after everything that happened. The divorce didn't just leave me emotionally drained, it also hit me hard financially. Arya and I had combined our finances when we got married, and even though we didn't have a joint account, we were both contributing to our shared expenses. When we split up, I was left with most of the debt from the wedding, as well as the cost of our honeymoon. Arya didn't offer to help with any of it, and I was too proud to ask, so I took it all on myself. Even though it was a huge burden, I had to make a lot of sacrifices to keep up with the payments. I downgraded my apartment, sold some of my stuff, and cut back on anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. It was tough, but I didn't want to be in debt for the rest of my life because of a failed marriage. I was angry that Arya had walked away scot-free. It felt like she got to move on with her life while I was stuck dealing with the aftermath. Now that all that backstory is done, this is the reason why I've decided to write this post. About a month ago, I got the news that Arya and Evan were engaged. Kayla told me that Evan had proposed using the same ring I had given to Arya when I proposed. That was a real slap in the face. It was bad enough that she moved on so quickly, but to use the same ring that I had picked out for her, it felt like a whole new level of disrespect. They were planning a small ceremony, inviting some of our mutual friends, which caused even more drama. Some of our friends were conflicted about going to the wedding because they didn't want to choose sides. Kayla, in particular, was really confused. She had been invited, but she felt like what Arya had done was wrong. She didn't agree with how Arya had treated me, but she also didn't want to lose her friendship with her. Kayla ended up declining the invitation to Arya and Evan's wedding, which I was grateful for. It showed me that she had my back, even though it put her in an awkward position. But it also made things complicated between us because I knew she was still in contact with Arya. I didn't want to make her feel like she had to choose between us. Kayla tried to stay neutral, but it was clear she was struggling with it all. She told me she didn't want to be in the middle, but she also didn't want to cut Arya out of her life completely. I understood where she was coming from, but it was hard for me to accept. I didn't want to lose Kayla as a friend, but I also didn't want to keep being reminded of Arya every time I saw her. It was a tough situation, and I wasn't sure how to handle it without making things worse. Just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, Arya reached out to me out of the blue. I had blocked her on all social media after the divorce, but she created a new Instagram account to get around that and sent me a message. I wasn't expecting it at all, so it caught me off guard. In her message, she blamed me for her wedding with Evan being called off. Apparently, things didn't go as planned, and they ended up breaking up. She claimed it was because of the bad karma I had wished on her and accused me of ruining her life. The message was long and full of accusations, saying that if I had been more understanding, if I had talked to Evan and made it clear that she didn't love me anymore, things wouldn't have ended this way. She also admitted that during a heated argument with Evan, she had brought me up, which made him question whether she was truly over our relationship. The final straw, that I heard from Kayla later, was that Evan discovered that Arya had used the engagement ring I had given her for their wedding. He saw this as a clear sign that she hadn't fully moved on from me. Feeling hurt, Evan called off the wedding, telling her he couldn't marry someone who wasn't fully committed to him. At first, I considered ignoring the message. I didn't want to get dragged back into her drama, especially after everything I had been through. But the more I thought about it, the more it pissed me off. She was trying to put the blame on me for her own decisions, and I wasn't going to let her do that. So, I decided to reply. I told her that what happened was karma for how she treated me. I reminded her that she had been the one to lie, to cheat, and to walk away from our marriage without a second thought. I told her that she deserved everything that happened because she had brought it on herself. I wasn't kind in my response, but I didn't care. I was done being the nice guy who always tried to see the best in people. After I sent the message, I blocked her again and didn't give it a second thought. Apparently, my message didn't go over well with Arya. Kayla told me that Arya had a severe panic attack after reading what I said. She ended up in the hospital because of it, and her parents were furious. They blamed me for triggering her breakdown and said that I was the reason she was in such a bad place. I didn't know how to feel about that. On one hand, I didn't want to be responsible for someone's mental health issues, but on the other hand, I felt like Arya was trying to manipulate the situation to make me look like the bad guy again. Kayla was also surprised by my response to Arya's message. She knew I was angry, but she didn't expect me to be so harsh. She told me that she thought I was better than that I should have been the bigger person and just ignored Arya. She said she understood why I was upset, but she didn't agree with how I handled it. This led to a bit of a problem between us because I felt like she was taking Arya's side, even though she claimed she was just trying to be neutral. Kayla started to distance herself from me after that. She was still friendly, but there was a definite change in our relationship. She wasn't as supportive as she used to be, and I could tell she was disappointed in me. It hurt because Kayla had been one of my closest friends throughout this whole ordeal, but now it felt like I was losing her too. I tried to explain my side of things, but she didn't want to hear it. She thought I was just being petty and that I needed to let go of the anger and move on. The tension between Kayla and me finally came to a head when we had a big argument about everything that had happened. I was fed up with her trying to tell me how I should feel and how I should handle things. I told her that I had every right to be angry and that Arya deserved what I said to her. Kayla didn't agree. She said that while Arya had made mistakes, it wasn't my place to kick her when she was down. She said she expected more from me, and that really hurt. The argument ended with both of us saying things we didn't mean. I told her that if she was going to keep defending Arya, maybe we shouldn't be friends anymore. She fired back that maybe I needed to take a look at myself and figure out why I was still so angry. It was a nasty fight, and it left us both feeling pretty awful. We haven't really spoken much since then, and it feels like I've lost one of my closest friends because of this whole mess. Now, things at work are pretty tense. Kayla and I used to be really close, but after our argument, there's been this awkwardness between us. We still have to see each other every day, and it's uncomfortable. We're polite, but it's not the same. But recently, Kayla pulled me aside and suggested that I talk to Arya. She said that maybe if I reached out and told her that I didn't mean what I said, it might help both of us move on. She didn't say I should apologize, but she hinted that it might be the right thing to do. I was shocked that she would even suggest that, considering everything Arya put me through. But Kayla insisted that it could be a way to find closure and that it might help me let go of the anger I'm holding on to. According to Kayla, Arya is still struggling with her mental health. She's had a few more breakdowns since our last interaction, and she's not doing well. She's back in therapy, but it doesn't seem to be helping much. Kayla said that Arya's parents are really worried about her and that they're trying to get her the help she needs. But then there's Kayla's opinion to consider. She's been a good friend to me, and I don't want to lose her over this. If talking to Arya would help repair my friendship with Kayla, maybe it's worth considering. But I'm not sure I can bring myself to do it. I feel like I'm caught between wanting to move on and wanting to hold on to my pride. It's a tough place to be, and I don't know what the right decision is. So, here I am, asking for some outside perspective. Am I the asshole for telling my ex-wife that being left was karma for how she treated me?